I almost got done with my walk today and then realized that I must have dropped my umbrella. My umbrella's not with me. So it's giving me the perfect opportunity to practice the advantage method, which I just learned from Tufti the Priestess. So that is an excellent book. That part of the book at the end is like, don't recommend this to others. So I'm not recommending it to you. And very wild book, but this advantage method is really cool. And apparently, I mean, it makes sense. It's like saying like always looking for the blessing in disguise, like always looking for the silver lining, basically like be an optimist, like think that everything's working out for you. And the idea they say is that that actually like helps things to work out for you. But I think even if that's not the case, which I do think it's the case, but even if you're not there yet, like it just makes things feel a little nicer. So you don't have to know the advantage. You can just like believe that there's an advantage. So it's like if someone was like, trees grow downward into the ground, I'd be like, yeah, that is not how it works. I just know that that's not how it works. Like trees don't grow down into the ground. So if I keep practicing and just convince myself like everything that looks wrong is actually for my advantage, like it's helping me in some way. This is kind of strange because I feel like I don't remember when I put it in my pocket, but seems like I'm backtracking quite a lot. But again, I don't know. Maybe I'm meant to lose the umbrella because actually, well, this is an interesting one. I didn't think of this. But everything that's like of poor quality that I use and I'm like, oh, this is not very good, I keep losing those things. So like my car that was breaking down all of the time and was like so old and I was trying to just drag it out, it just completely died. And I had my experience with the contractor that was like not working. It just completely blew up. Like, and this umbrella, this is a great example. And I noticed it, but I didn't notice it. Like my big life lesson right now is that, I mean, there's two. One, that I'm ready to stop expecting from others things that they don't have to give. And two, that I'm ready to stop denying myself things that I desire, and stop like giving myself the worst thing always. So this morning it was pouring rain and we have two umbrellas and one is really nice and new and works great and the other one is crappy. And I gave my kid the nice one and I took the crappy one. And maybe I lost it for that reason, so that I can give myself a reason to get a nice one. Like I really feel like, and that actually is in the Tufti book too, that like when you get aligned with the new script, like the things that are remnants from the old script will just get pulled away, taken away, washed away. So maybe that's what this was for. Yeah. I think I'm gonna let it go. Yeah. I'm gonna let it go. And maybe that umbrella was meant for someone else. And I'm gonna get myself a nice umbrella. Because it makes sense to have a nice working umbrella in a place where it rains a lot. And this can help me to like really appreciate the experience of being like, yeah, this is time to let this go. This wasn't working very well. I'm experiencing stress right now. Just so you know, I may look very calm and like I just took this lesson in stride, but I feel like that umbrella was good enough and it's fine and I want to go back and get it. But I feel like this is an important moment to like trust that that umbrella was meant for someone else. And I am meant to have the experience of having like a really awesome umbrella that works great, that I feel good about, that's not like a I'll take the crappy one situation. And I do like see myself in the goal frame, like my destination is a person who has things that work really well and that is comfortable with receiving those things, and that doesn't have to have them like be really uncomfortable for a while before I finally give in and like painfully, stressfully receive the thing that works better, or replace it with something that's like also semi crappy. Yep. And what was really fascinating is that I've had this like fabulous few weeks. I don't think I put here, but maybe I did. No, I don't think I put here that I had this phenomenal experience of working with Fire and Katie. Had the opportunity to do a Judge Your Neighbor worksheet with her. And if you are interested at all, I highly recommend giving yourself the opportunity to do that. Basically, she does live Zoom calls, 3 times a week, and she has a sliding scale, and the lowest is $5, so it's like super affordable. And she, like 100 people go, and she calls on someone. You raise your hand, and if she calls on you, then she does the work with you. And oh my God, I did it on this experience with the contractor where I lost $37,000, and it was causing me a lot of stress. And she was, her philosophy is that the only thing that causes stress or suffering is what you're thinking and believing. And it's 100% true. It's wacky, but I can't deny it. I keep experiencing it. And so, it was what I was thinking and believing. And now I realize I gave him $37,000 in order to have this like huge release from my life. And it's extraordinary, and I'm so grateful. And like she said, it was like a good deal. It was a cheap deal. I'd pay so much more, honestly, because this is going to reduce suffering in my life so significantly. This thing about expecting from others things that they don't have to give. And so I've been sort of floating in this like bliss for the past 2 weeks since having that experience. And I had my therapy session a few days ago, and was thinking about it like nothing's wrong, like everything's perfect and just getting better. And I was thinking, okay, is there any remnants? Is there any suffering still in my life? And I was noticing that this experience of denying myself of material items and still feeling guilt when I buy something materially or spend money on myself is still lingering. And that's something that I would like to let go of, because it doesn't feel resonant with like the concept that I'm like a divine creation and worthy of all good things. And that, just the way I want to shower my kid and the people in my life with beautiful love and material items and things that they love and enjoy. It makes perfect sense to do that for myself, because I want to cherish myself in that same way. So I wanted to look at that with her, and we do parts work with EMDR. And so we went into like, whenever we go into the parts work with I use the bilateral, like ding, 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 ding. It's like a little sound in my headphones. And so we go in, and it's always the same house that I like hope that I end up living in that house someday, because it's a really nice house. So it's always in the same house, and I go in, and like everybody's milling about. I've gotten to know like 20 of my parts. So there's always feels like a big group of people, and there's ones from the past, there's ones from the future. So I go in, and I'm like, hey everybody, like, does anybody have any thoughts about this idea of how I'm like always like stingy with myself? And I thought it was gonna have to do with growing up in evangelical Christianity, and the idea that like money is the root of all evil, and like it's easier to go into heaven through the camel through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to get into heaven or whatever. So I thought it was maybe going to have to do with that. I didn't really know. Because I actually grew up around money and people who like spent money on themselves. So I thought probably was that. But surprisingly, it was this moment in time. It was my 13-year-old self, like 12, 13, which is also interesting because my kid is 12, almost 13. And so it's like, I really think your kids give you an opportunity to like understand your stuff at the phases that they're going through. So that part came forward and was really upset. Like I've never had an aggressive part. I've had like very defensive parts, but I've never had an aggressive part. And this part was like, yep, we had like to survive, we need to shut down desire. And it was when I was starting to go through puberty and have like awareness of my gender and sexuality stuff, not being cishet. And they were like, yeah, desire is dangerous, desire is life-threatening. You got to shut it down. You can't receive anything that you want, because if you open the door to receiving anything that sounds good to you, then like we're opening the door for you to be trans and queer, and that's really dangerous, which it is, especially when I was a child and dependent on people who wouldn't have had the resources to support me. And so this part was like, and the funny thing was, it was all around this idea of that, like, I wanted a pair of tennis shoes, like not a specific pair of tennis shoes, just like a pair of tennis shoes. I have a pair of tennis shoes, but they're like kind of nice, and so I don't let myself like get them dirty, and so I stress when I'm wearing them. And so I've wanted like a pair of tennis shoes that I could get dirty, okay, for like years. I'm not kidding. And I have tried even to buy some, and then I had like a really like freak out and had to return them. Like I couldn't handle spending money on tennis shoes, and I even like got the cheapest ones I could find at Walmart that were like $40 or something, and I couldn't handle it. So I have thought about these tennis shoes so many times, okay? And what's interesting is like I actually, after my therapy session, I did like a deep dive and found the pair of tennis shoes. And this makes so much sense because they are the pair of tennis shoes that my friend, who was like super gender nonconforming in a world where we were not allowed to be, like she got like really like a lot of negative feedback about it. And it was in that age range that I hung out with her, like 10, 11, 12, and she had these tennis shoes. They were New Balance tennis shoes, and they're like hikerish looking, and they had yellow shoelaces, and they were like super mask. I think they are. I found them. I like searched through Google's and found them, and they're very cool, and they don't make them anymore, and there's not any in my size that are like on like eBay or vintage or whatever. They're from the early 90s. But there's a few pairs, but they're not in my size. But I thought they were so cool and like so like rugged and adventure-y and like could definitely get dirty. They're say like trailhead on them, and they're like hiking shoes. And so where was I taking that? Oh, so it was around these tennis shoes, and interesting enough, those are the tennis shoes that I was subconsciously wanting, and I couldn't quite name that, but it became clear that those are the tennis shoes, and she was the representation of queer that I had at that time period, and specifically, like, of gender nonconformity, like, pushing against the, like, femme thing. Like, I remember she got in, like, really bad trouble because she came up with, like, a pair of jeans that she could wear, and it was, like, big deal. So And she was so brave, and she was like going up against this thing with her family, and I was like so envious and wished that I could be like her, but I was like so scared, couldn't do it. So I was talking to this 13-year-old in my parts work therapy session and was like, what about these shoes? Like, you think we could get these shoes? They flipped out at me. This is so intense. It still physically feels scary to me. It was the first time I've been like physically scared in parts work. They took this thing that was like a Play-Doh mold. You know how like Play-Doh molds sometimes have two sides, and you can like put the Play-Doh in and then you clamp the two sides together and you like click it, and then it like makes a little teddy bear or whatever. And it's like the two sides have the shape of the teddy bear, and it smushes the mold into that shape. So they took one of those and they clamped it around me, both sides. And I like came right out of, I was like, ah, like, what the fuck? And they were like, you have to stay in the mold, like get into the mold. This is quite dangerous. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so then my therapist was like, yeah, let's take a break. Like, let's not go back in there. And I was like, listen, I feel like it's really important for me to go back in there and be like, no, take the mold off and say like, no, and then leave. And she was like, okay, if you feel safe, because it freaked me out. So I went back in and I took it off. I like busted it. And then I took like a hammer and I smashed it. And that really pissed them off. And they got like freaked out. And they started slapping, hitting me. Like, and I was like, Jesus. And when my kid was little, and when toddlers tantrum, they kind of do that same slappy thing. I would always say, like, I know you're really upset, but, like, no one's allowed to hit me. And I would, like, remove space. So, create space. Remove my physical body. So, I said that. I was like, no one's allowed to hit me. Like, I'm going to give you some space. I went out into the living room because, like, this 13-year-old has always been in this little hallway, but I've never been in their room. Like, I didn't even know there was a room down there. But they were in that room. My therapist had been like, do you want to shut the door? And I was like, I feel like that doesn't respect their autonomy. Like, I think they have a really valid reason to be angry and threatened by me and wanting to shut me down. So I just left the door open, and I was like, you do you, like, whatever, but no one's allowed to hit me, so I'm going to, like, take some space. And when I left, they were like trying to piece together that mold. Like they were trying to like glue it back together. So sad. So what I did was I went out, and I have this older self. It's my oldest self. And they kind of show up like a shaman, like a god type character, like an all-knowing, like super compassionate, super cozy, like grandma type figure, which when I went through 12 steps and I figured out like the God of my understanding or whatever, it came through as like a grandma type figure too. So my oldest self is always in this one corner, like always on this little, like not little actually, big cushy like armchair, and they are often like pulling tarot cards. So in the past couple of times though, they've been out like hanging with my 3-year-old and my baby self, because just recently my 3-year-old decided, I know you don't have all the fill in the gaps, but I'm trying to fill in the gaps as much as I can. It's all very fascinating. It's a whole world that exists. So my 3-year-old, like finally, they've been like super hyper vigilant, in charge of everything forever. And they finally like let me hold my baby self so that they could take a nap. And they've been napping for weeks now because they're so worn out. So the oldest one is like in the middle of the living room, like sort of near them, with the baby, and a few different people are holding the baby this time. But anyway, so I mentioned to the oldest one, like, this is going on with the 13-year-old. Like, I'm thinking maybe you'd be the right person to check in with them. Like, I'm not the right person to check in with them right now. And they were like, yeah, totally, I'll do that. And some of the older ones, I was like, you know, whatever you all think, because the older ones are really cool. And so the older ones were like, not the oldest one. The oldest one went to check on 13-year-old. The older ones were like, hey, like, let's take you outside. Like, let's give you a break. That was a lot. They set me up with like super beautiful, like kind of like if you've seen, okay, this is my favorite flower that's, I just have to take a moment, that's blossoming right now. These are lilacs. I have a dream of having like lots of lilacs at the new house. Aren't they beautiful? So pretty. There's white ones too. These ones are purple. So if you've seen the old movie, The Little Princess with Shirley Temple, like there's like this beautiful like satin bedding that she wakes up to at one point, and that's always been a dream of mine. So they took me out, they got me like in a bed with all this satin bedding, and they started bringing me like the beautiful like curries and dal and like naan bread and drinks and like all these beautiful things. And I'm like, oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. And like just relaxing. They're giving me all these beautiful things. And then right before, because we kind of had to go, right before we came out, I was like, what about the tennis shoes? And one of them's like, I have them. Like, you're good to go on the tennis shoes. So it's like a slightly older version of myself that has the tennis shoes. So it was very cute. All of that to say, it really helped me to understand like this. Oh, my battery's going to die. This urge to deny myself and like not give into my desires, because any crack in that like door, it's like Pandora's box. It's like you give yourself some coffee from Dunkin' Donuts and like you're gonna blow the whole thing. Like all your desires are gonna come out, and you're gonna be this super trans queer person, which interestingly, like I've done that, you know, but it's like still trying, it's like fighting with me in this little way by being like, yeah, but you can't enjoy life. Like, you gotta be stingy with yourself. We're gonna make it like hard and scarcity since you blew up the whole thing. So yeah, it'll be really interesting to see what happens. I'm excited just for the knowledge, and I'm loving like noticing it. And I'll like, you know, I told my therapist like maybe I'll touch base with the 13-year-old. And I have been. I've sort of been like, hey, like, what's up? Like, I did, you know, Google and look for the shoes, and they were not thrilled. And I've just been, like, saying hi and no pressure kind of thing, you know, like teenagers. But it's been so cool. And I don't even know what I started this video about. Oh, the umbrella. There you go. So, all of that being said, like, my future self, or like my ideal self, is someone who will be able to identify like, oh, looks like this umbrella is not working great. Like, time to move on and get a nice new umbrella. Instead of needing for these things to be like sneakily removed from my life in order to get me on the path where I have the nice working things. But that's how it's working so far. And I imagine that it won't need to do that for much longer, because I'm starting to realize it sooner and really appreciate it. And it's kind of cute because I just watched the movie The Adjustment Bureau. Check it out. It's really, really fascinating. But and I won't totally spoil it, but one of the premises is that there's like a bureau of like kind of like the FBI or something, like Secret Service agents who are like coming in and adjusting circumstances in our life to like make sure we're on the right path. And so it feels like there was like probably an adjustment bureau person who was like, and I'm gonna slip this umbrella out of your pocket. I love it. All right, love you. Bye.